This is the mobile CI/CD with GitHub Actions speedrun. Within this speedrun, I will guide you through the fastest way of setting up a mobile CI/CD with GitHub Actions. Currently, it's focused only on React Native with Expo support, but most of the workflow steps I will be creating are applicable to almost any app. I am not going to cover the React Native app creation by itself. Look, this speedrun is really not focused on that. My intention is to get you value as fast as possible, which is solely focused on getting your GitHub Actions mobile CI/CD set up. So I will be using the free version of beplus Bootstrap Mobile. beplus Bootstrap Mobile is an opinionated way of setting up a React Native project, whether with React Native CLI or Expo. And the opinionated way, I mean, it's cleaned up a little bit. There is a support for multiple environments, meaning you can have a dev, stage, and production app, all of them installed on your simulator or device at the same time. There's also a React Native configuration included, so all of the configuration for your mobile app can be done just by using environment variables. But you will see the details a little bit later once you will see the app actually running. Now, React Native CLI or Expo. There are countless discussions which one is better, and I am not here to tell you which one of them you should use. But I think that we can agree that Expo is easier to start with, while React Native CLI might be more of like an industry standard for more complex applications. In case you don't have the experience of managing the React Native projects, feel free to go with Expo. I've created a beplus Bootstrap Mobile Expo plugin, which is free. And with the Expo pre-build and a continuous native generation, it will generate the native projects for both iOS and Android for you in the form as suggested with beplus Bootstrap Mobile, as I have said a little bit earlier. Now, how this speedrun is going to be structured? As I have said, my intention with this speedrun is to get you the value as fast as possible. I'm creating actually a three of them. One with Bitrise, the other one with CodeMagic, and this one with GitHub Actions. While there are differences between these platforms, the concept of releasing a mobile app is pretty much the same. Each of these platforms comes with a kind of specific way how do they manage signing, environment variables, or secrets, but I would like to stick with more of like a universal approach. So I'm not gonna use the specific way of these platforms in any of this speedrun for you to paint a better picture how it can be done. And at the same time, in case you will follow this kind of universal way, so to say, it will be much easier for you to migrate your app between those providers later on. So what's in it for you? What am I gonna cover? So first, I've already spoken a little bit about the app, and as I've said, I will not go too deep into it. You can go on GitHub, fork the free repo, and follow the instructions to run the app. Let's focus really on setting up the GitHub Actions mobile CI/CD pipeline. As you can see, there are two steps which feel free to skip them, but one of them is connecting your repository and the other one creating applications. Look, with other platforms, for example with Bitrise and CodeMagic, there is a concept of applications or projects and you have to connect your repository. With GitHub Actions, this is a little bit different. It's integrated directly into GitHub, which means there's no need to connect the repository. The repository is already there. While with the third-party platforms, you need to set up a way how that platform can actually access your source code. So it's as easy as creating an SSH key and adding it to the platform so that the platform can access your code, and then create an entity within the platform called project with Bitrise or app with CodeMagic. But the details about this will be covered in those particular speedruns. Here, I will focus most on the configuration, where I have created like a unified way, or better said, consolidated way of putting your configuration together. So I will provide you with a list of environment variables you have to have set on the platform in order for the pipeline to run properly. I will also focus on the app stores and code signing. With the app stores, the intention is to show you how to actually create the apps. While you can do it automatically with iOS or the Apple App Store, but you still have to do it manually with Google Play, and I will show you how. The next step is code signing. Code signing is a complicated process of generating a certificate and provisioning profiles for iOS, while it's a little bit easier for Android or Google Play, where the only thing you need is an upload key. So I will show you this process as well. And the last but not least is the actual creation of the workflow. I will guide you step by step by creating the workflow, each of the steps that the workflow needs to include, why those steps are there. So following this speedrun, you can literally create the minimal workflow that's required to deploy your app. So without further talk, let's dive in. And I know that I'm repeating myself, but once again, this speedrun is not focused on creating the actual React Native app. There's a free GitHub repository for beplus Bootstrap Mobile where you can find the project for React Native CLI or Expo. If you are going through this speedrun for the first time, I highly recommend following through all the steps with my code. Why? It's very simple. Troubleshooting efficiency. With the beplus Bootstrap Mobile source code, you will run into the least amount of issues possible. Why? Because I've created the speedrun based on that code. And even if you encounter some issues, there will be a way, an easy way how to fix it that's going to be part of the beplus Mobile Playbook and the speedrun that is a part of it. Now, that brings me to the beplus Mobile Playbook itself. As you can see, I'm actually showing you the speedrun in the playbook. This is the place where you will find the most up-to-date information about the GitHub Actions and setting up a mobile CI/CD with GitHub Actions. Also, with this approach, you will understand the concepts much better, so then migrating your app or setting up a GitHub Actions mobile CI/CD pipeline with your own code will be much more easier. So now let's go to GitHub and actually fork the repo. I have mine already set up, so I can move to the next step. The next step is making sure that you have the configuration in place. I'm going to work with environment variables, environment secrets, and the actual GitHub environments within my repo. First, let's go to GitHub and actually create the environments for the deployments. As I have said, the beplus Bootstrap Mobile supports multiple environments, dev, stage, and production. So it's obvious for me to create those environments on GitHub so that I can easily choose for which environment I am going to build my app for. So open your repo on GitHub, go to Settings, Environments, and let's actually create dev, stage, and production. Good, so I have my environments, dev, stage, and production. The next step is to configure the variables. And as I have already mentioned, I created a list of variables you need to have configured and available in the environment, whether you will be running it locally or on GitHub Actions, or probably later on with Bitrise and CodeMagic, so that the whole build and deployment process will be successful. These variables are divided into two groups. The regular variables, which can be stored as a plain text, for example, application name or application bundle ID. The next group are secrets, which allows you to store sensitive information, for example, App Store Connect API key, the password for Fastlane match, or Google Play Service Account JSON file. As you can see, some of those variables are blue, which means it's a link to the detail of that variable. So let's, for example, click on App Store Connect Team ID. You can click on it and you will get navigated to a detail about the variable stating what the variable is and how you can actually get the value for that variable. Always, you can click back to go back to where you clicked on the variable from. This will help you easily navigate within the speedrun and the beplus Mobile Playbook. Also, some of the variables and secrets might be easily reused between multiple projects. For example, the details about App Store Connect API key, the details about Apple Developer or Google Play Service Account JSON file, those might be reused between multiple apps you have. So it makes sense to save them within GitHub on a place that will allow you to reuse them. For this purpose, GitHub allows you to set environment variables and secrets on the organization level. For you to make easy which one to set at which place, I've marked the variables that you might consider setting on the organization level with a red asterisk. I also think there is a limitation on GitHub. In order to store variables and secrets on the organization level, you have to be on a paid plan. But I don't think it's that big of a deal because with the GitHub pricing, it's very cheap to have a paid organization. On the other hand, for example, Bitrise allows you to do it only on the enterprise plan. So let's actually set up the variables on GitHub Actions. But maybe one more thing. If you will go through the list, you can find some variables that you don't have a value for yet. For example, with App Store Connect, you need an Apple ID of the application, and you obviously can get that value or the Apple ID of the application after the application was created. So in case you are going to create a brand new applications for this purpose, where I will be creating the apps and I will show you where to get the value. So feel free to skip some of the variables in case you don't have the value, and we will fill them later on. Again, if you are unsure what the variable means, simply click on the variable and the beplus Mobile Playbook will guide you and show you the whole process how to actually get the value. In order to set up the variables and secrets, go into your repository settings to secrets and variables and actions. You can see that my environment secrets, repository secrets, organization secrets, that's the point where I said that you can set the variables on the organization level and then easily reuse them between the apps. And the same for variables, all of them are empty right now. So let me create the variables and secrets based on the speedrun and get back to you. So I have my environment variables and secrets set on both the organization level and repository level. So the organization variable looks like this. I have Apple Developer Team ID and team name, App Store Connect Team ID and team name, and also App Store Connect Key ID. Why am I setting App Store Connect Key ID as a plain text variable? Because at any time in the future, I would like to know which key is being used to deploy my app to App Store. This variable is not so secret anyways, because in order to create a token to access App Store Connect API, you need the key ID, issuer ID, and the actual key by itself. And then I also have Fastlane Match Storage and a Fastlane Match Storage Git URL. Actually, in order to manage certificates and provisioning profiles for Apple, beplus Bootstrap Mobile uses Fastlane Match. This repo might be completely free at this moment because in one of the next steps in the code signing, I will create the certificates and provisioning profiles from scratch. Then, on the repository level, I have Android namespace, Android package, and Android app application ID. You might wonder why am I setting three variables with the same value. Actually, the values might be different. So I want to support that scenario. But it's much easier to have these three values different when you are using React Native CLI over Expo, because with Expo, it doesn't work well in case, for example, the namespace and package is different from application ID. So for this reason, I'm keeping all the three variables with the same value. So over time, in case this will be fixed on Expo, or you are using React Native CLI, you have the possibility to have the values based on your needs, especially with your projects. With beplus Bootstrap Mobile, the value is the same. The same is for bundle ID and then the last application name, which is Bootstrap. As far as secrets goes, on the organization level, I have App Store Connect key content and key issuer ID, which are the secrets parts of the App Store Connect API key. I have a Fastlane match password. Here the same rule applies. In case you don't have a match password and you just create the new repo for Fastlane match, just feel free to create a new password and put some value in there, because in the next steps with the code signing, it will actually encrypt your repo with the value you created. Make sure that you log the value somewhere, because having the values on GitHub, it's only applicable on GitHub, and we will need the value in one of the next steps on your local machine in order to generate the signing assets. And the last is Google Play service account JSON key. On the repository level, I only have a Google Play upload key, which serves to sign my app in case, and this goes with every variable I've mentioned. In case you don't know how to actually create, for example, the upload key, App Store Connect API key, and where to get the values. As I've already said, the variables in the Speedrun are clickable, so you can go there and actually get the whole process, how to generate that file, how to get the value, and stuff like that. Now let's back here. So on the repository level, I only have Google Play upload key, and I think that one variable that is worth mentioning is Google Play upload key store content. Look, Google Play upload key store or upload key is a binary file, and you have to make it available in some way on GitHub Actions in order to sign the app and upload it to Google Play during the build process. The most easiest way, and as I have said before, the universal way, not to use specific steps for bitrise, not even thinking about putting the file into the repository and specifying its path. The most secure way is to create it as a secret, but you cannot store the secret as a file, and you cannot put the binary content in there. So I base64 encoded the file and the instructions. Again, in case you will click on the variable in the Speedrun, you will get the instructions how to actually do that. But when you will compare the variables I have just shown you in the GitHub interface with the variables that are here in the configuration section within the list, you will see that one of them is missing. And that's the BE-app Apple ID. I've already spoke about it. I still don't have this value. And again, we are creating applications for free environments, dev stage and production. So we will actually create free apps on App Store Connect and Google Play. And I will be setting after the next step the BE-app Apple ID here on the variables tab as an environment variable. So I will create free variables with the name BE-app Apple ID with the respective ID I get from the App Store Connect for each environment. But before I will do that, I need to actually create the apps. So for the configuration, and honestly, this was one of the harder parts. So it's already done. And now I need to create the apps. So let's move on to the next section. Now, creating the applications. As I've said, I need to create the apps for Apple, iOS, and Google Play, Android. With iOS, it's easier because I can use Fastlane Produce in order to create my apps automatically. In order to do that, you have to have the respective environment variables from the configuration section exported in your local environment. So by now you should have values for all of these environment variables and secrets. And in order to use Fastlane Produce to create your apps, as I've said, you need to have the values available in your local environment. So simply right now it's your local environment. So I am not considering which of them is secret and which of them is plain text. I will just go into my terminal and export each value for each environment variable. So then the process of creating the apps with Fastlane Produce can pick the values and actually automatically create the apps for you. When you have all of the environment variables and secrets available locally, you can proceed to actually creating the apps. But there's actually one catch per platform. In order to create the apps with App Store Connect, there's also an Apple ID required. In order for Fastlane Produce to create the applications for you, you need to supply an Apple ID. App Store Connect key is not enough. The variable for that is BE Fastlane username. So export this variable containing a value of your Apple ID, which is email address, which has sufficient permissions to create apps in App Store Connect. Now, assuming that you are in the root of the beplus Bootstrap Mobile source code, go to the iOS folder and run the command bundle exec fastlane apps. After running this command, you will have all of your applications, I mean dev stage and production, created within both Apple Developer and App Store Connect. Now, if you navigate to App Store Connect to the detail of your application that was just created, to the app information section, you will find the Apple ID. That's the ID I was talking about. That's the value you should store as BE-app Apple ID for each of the environments available on GitHub. So go to GitHub, click Manage Environment Variables, and set BE-app Apple ID with the respective value from App Store Connect for all dev stage and production. In case you have created just one, let's say for dev, it's really not necessary to create all of the free apps. So in case you went just the one, go to the particular environment and add the variable value. Once done, your environment variables for the particular environment will look like this. You can see that I have BE-app Apple ID for each of the environment, dev stage and production with a different value. And I got the value from App Store Connect from the detail of the app, general app information, Apple ID. So I have all of my apps in App Store Connect for the iOS platform available. The next thing I need to do is to make the same for Google Play. Unfortunately, there's not a way how we can automate this process. So the only thing you can do is to go to Google Play and create the app manually. So when you are in a Google Play, it is as easy as clicking Create the app. When you are creating the app within Google Play, you are not specifying the Android application ID. As I have already said, the first build for Google Play needs to be uploaded manually. So right now you are creating the app just with the app name, and before we'll do the build, we will upload a first build manually, which will set the application ID based on a bundle you will upload to Google Play as your first release. And again, it's unfortunate that nowadays it's not possible to automate this with Google as it is with Apple App Store. On the other hand, it's not that big of a deal in order to do just 2 steps manually, and after you will do it once, you can automate it from there on. And again, whether you will decide to create just one app for the dev environment for the purpose of this speedrun, or you will create all 3 of them in order to test having all of them at the same time on your device, is completely up to you. So just a quick recap before I will move on. You have forked the beplus Bootstrap Mobile repository and have the code available on your local machine. You created the environments on GitHub, environment variables on GitHub, and secrets on GitHub. You have your configuration in place on GitHub. At the same time, you created your applications from a local machine in App Store Connect by using Fastlane, which means that the same environment variables and secrets you created on GitHub, you have it available in your terminal on your local machine. We will still need them, so please keep the terminal open. You also have your Android application created in Google Play, and now we are moving into an interesting part, which is code signing. Again, this is going to be different for iOS and Android. For iOS, we are creating certificates and provisioning profiles. I'm going to use Fastlane Match, which will automate most of the process. And for Google, it's going to be a little bit simpler, where the only thing I need is Google Play upload key. Assuming that you have all of the environment variables from the configuration section available in your environment locally, and I know that I'm repeating myself, but repetition is a matter of learning, right? And this is really important, so I will keep saying that over and over again. So you have the environment variables ready on your local machine. The only thing you need to do is to run Fastlane again to synchronize your signing. As it was when we were creating apps for Apple, there's a minor small catch here as well. And that's the match password environment variable. As you can see, I'm following a certain naming convention for all of the environment variables, and that's a purpose behind it. But for Fastlane match password, I'm using BE Fastlane match password variable, but Fastlane has no idea that such variable exists, and there is no way in a Fastlane match configuration to provide Fastlane with a variable name from which to load the password. So you have to have match password variable available on your local machine. With GitHub Action, this is being automatically provided by the workflow, and you will see once I will be defining the workflow steps how it works. But for now, in order to initially create the signing assets, I have to make sure that I have my match password available in this variable. In case you follow through the whole speedrun, you already have BE Fastlane match password exported. So the easy thing you can do is to simply export match password with a value of BE Fastlane match password. I have my value in there. Now, still assuming I'm in the iOS folder of beplus Bootstrap Mobile, in order to create and store your certificates and provisioning profiles for iOS in the Git repo that was set as a Fastlane Git URL, you have to run a single command, and that's bundle exec fastlane signing sync. And there are a few parameters to it. First, they have to make sure that the signing sync is not running in a read-only mode. And then it depends whether you have a clean account on Apple Developer, meaning you don't have certificates and provisioning profiles. Feel free to set force to true. And in case you want to delimit the applications to a certain environment, let's say you created only the application App Store Connect with the dev environment, you can set the environment to dev. I'm going to run it this way, so it will run in the read-only mode and it will recreate potentially existing or expired provisioning profiles and certificates. Now, I have both development and distribution certificates and provisioning profiles for all of my dev, stage, and production apps created, installed on my local machine, and saved in a Fastlane match repo. That's all I have to do for iOS code signing. Let's move on to Android. There are two things you have to do in order to have code signing for your Android app set up. The first one is to generate an upload key, and the other one is to enroll into Google Play app signing. While the second step is not required and is optional, you can still use your upload key as signing key for your app. It's a much better practice to actually enroll in a Google Play app signing so that the Google will actually manage your key to sign your apps. And the upload key serves only for the purpose of Google knowing that the build you are uploading is actually from you. If you don't know how to generate an upload key, click on the generate an upload key, which will provide you with the whole process how to do that. It's very easy. Just make sure to note the path to your file. If you skipped setting the value for a Google Play upload key store content during the configuration phase, now it's the time where you should base64 encode your key store or your upload key you just generated and set it as a variable here. When you click on the variable here, you will actually get a command in order to do that. Now, before I will move on to the most interesting part of this speedrun, which is actually defining the workflow on GitHub Actions, I need to fix the one more thing. And I've mentioned it several times during this speedrun. There's no way how to automate builds with Google in case you will not create the application manually, which we've already done. And the second, in case you will not upload the first build manually. So you need to upload the first build to Google Play manually before GitHub Actions will be able to do it automatically. In order to do that and actually get the bundle file, the AAB file, you will be able to manually upload to Google Play. Let's build the app locally. Again, I'm assuming that all of the configuration variables are available in your environment, but again, there's a one small catch. You remember that you were base64 encoding your upload key and setting it on GitHub. Right now, in order to generate the first build you will be able to upload to Google Play, you need to make sure that even on your local machine, the process can access the upload key in some way. beplus Bootstrap Mobile is configured in a way that it will pick up a file that's exported as a BE Google Play upload key store file path, or as you can see in the Android app build Gradle file, in case the variable Google Play upload key store file path is not set, it will try to pick a file upload.keystore from the Android app folder. So there are actually two ways how you can do it. Either export the variable or move the key store you have generated into the Android app folder. Once you did it, and assuming that you are in the Android folder of the beplus Bootstrap Mobile codebase, the command to deploy or to prepare the first build is bundle exec fastlane deploy, and let's do it for the dev environment. In case you created all three apps, dev stage and production, obviously do it for all three. Each process based on the environment that is here will set a different bundle ID on the actual AAB file being produced. So I will run this command. The actual process will fail, and that's okay, because the first manual build was still not provided to Google. But at least part of the output, you can get the path to your file. So simply open that folder where you have the AAB bundle file for Android, switch to Google Play, go to internal testing, create new release, and now quickly back to what I was saying before. The recommended way is to enroll into Google Play app signing. There's a link in the Speedrun and the playbook to explain what exactly does it mean, but click on the choose signing key and click use Google generated key. When this is processed, drag and drop your bundle file into Google Play and wait for it to be uploaded. Now you are done with Android 2. So you have your app, you have your configuration, the configuration is available on GitHub Actions, you have the configuration available locally, which from this point we don't need anymore. You have apps created in App Store Connect, you have apps created in Google Play, and you have signing ready for both iOS and Android. So now the time has come. Let's create the GitHub Actions workflow. GitHub Actions workflow is a configurable automated process that can run one or more jobs. Here, within this speedrun, I'm going to create a minimal workflow in order to deploy your app to Google Play and Apple App Store. This workflow is going to be saved in .github workflows minimal.jml in your repository. So let's actually create that file, GitHub workflows minimal JML. So I have my file ready. This section will guide you through setting up the workflow, including the configuration, all the steps that you have to have in place with a basic trigger using the workflow dispatch GitHub event. So let's go step by step. First, this is the minimal structure of the file. So copy and paste that. Now, this is the minimal configuration, so I will copy this one as well into the env. Now, it defines the environment, which is going to be provided from the input. You will see how it works once the workflow file will be done and pushed into the repo. It contains the platform, two variables, BEApp version override and BEApp build number override. You can use these variables to override the version you are actually deploying to Apple App Store and Google Play. So, as you will see later on when I will be adding the steps, I'm using a tool called beplus CLI that will help me to get the latest version and latest build number. How this works? The beplus CLI will try to get the latest version from both App Store Connect or Google Play. It will then read the version from package.json and the build number from package.json, and it will check whether a variable of app version override or app build number override exists in the environment. Then it will pick the highest semantic version and the highest build number so that the build will actually succeed. The last variable beapp path is here only in case you would like to use the workflow, let's say, within a monorepo. Normally within a monorepo, your app will have a different path. There are multiple packages within the monorepo. So let's say your app will reside in packages apps mobile. In this case, you will just update beapp path and this workflow will be able to pick it up even when used within a monorepo. Since beplus Bootstrap Mobile 3 is not a monorepo, the beapp path is going to be empty. Now let's move on to actually defining the step. This is the basic structure for jobs, so I will put that one in place as well. It only defines the name of the job and the machine on which the build job will run, which is based on the platform. For iOS, it will run on the Mac OS. For Android, it will run on Linux. Now, here is a list of steps that you have to create within your workflow. Each of these steps has a particular reason, obviously. So first I will go through the steps real quick and then we'll put the steps into my workflow file. So first I have to make sure the source code is checked out and ready on the build machine. I'm going to use Node version 20, so I'm switching the Node version. Setting a Python, normally this is not necessary, but for beplus Bootstrap Mobile and using beplus CLI to get the versions as I have described a few minutes back, this is a required step. So once the beplus CLI functionality will be moved to a more native integration, this step will be removed, but right now please keep it there. I will also activate a proper Ruby version. I will switch my Java to version 17. Maybe one catch here. I don't need to set Java to version 17 for iOS, but I'm defining a minimal workflow that's going to work for both platforms. And as you can see here, these steps will run conditionally. So switching Java to version 17 is only going to happen in case I'm building for Android. Now, here are two, or actually three steps that are related to the beplus platform and are using the free beplus CLI. So first I have to install beplus CLI, but in order to do that and not to require sudo permissions, there are certain environment variables that have to be available. So these steps make that happen. The next step is the actual installation of beplus CLI. If you are interested what beplus CLI is, click here, there's a whole documentation and explanation. There is a lot of things you can do with beplus CLI. Some of them are free, for example, managing the versioning of mobile apps, as you will be doing right now. But for the mobile all access, there is much more. I also need to prepare a configuration.env. As I have said, the refined version of beplus Bootstrap Mobile uses environment variables in order to configure the project. One of these things is application name. And in order, especially in this case, for Android to pick the application name from the beAppName variable, I have to make sure that that variable with the value you define on GitHub Actions or in the configuration of your GitHub repo is available in a .env. As you can see, there is a commented line that uses beplus config to set that variable. And right now it's intentional because beplus config is only available for the all access license and on free it's not available. I decided to make it free also for configuring the basics for let's say this speedrun, but it's still not ready. So this is a kind of hacky way of making sure that the beAppName is available in a .env, but it works. Then I need to make sure that my dependencies are installed. beplus Bootstrap Mobile is using pnpm. So in case later on when you will be migrating your project, make sure that you are using the package manager your project is using. I need to install bundler dependencies, CocoaPods dependencies, and as it was with Java for Android, it's the same with CocoaPods for iOS. I don't need to install CocoaPods dependencies in case I'm building Android app. So again, these steps runs conditionally. Now here is the interesting part I was talking about, and it's the getting the Android upload key. The upload key needs to be an actual file in the file system. While locally, when you were doing the first build for Android, you were setting BE Google Play upload key store file path for GitHub Actions and the configuration within the repo where you will run the workflow, you were setting BE Google Play upload key store content, which was a base64 encoded binary key store you generated. Now I have to make sure that this file is being decoded and saved into the Android app upload key store. I've already spoke about that in case the key store file path is not available, the beplus Bootstrap Mobile app will automatically pick up the Android app upload key store file. So this is the way, and I would say this is a universal way you can use on any platform to make your key store available while still keeping it secure. And you don't need to rely on, for example, storing the key store on AWS as free and providing like a short, authenticated URL, downloading the file and saving it somewhere. You can use tools like secrets that are already available on each platform and do it this way, which according to me is much easier. The next step is to set Android SDK location. That's very easy. And the last three steps, fast lane match. Fastlane Match is there to make sure that the code signing assets for iOS, meaning certificates and provisioning profiles you've generated locally and which were saved into the GitHub repository, will be available and installed on the build machine. Now you can see that the command to do that is exactly the same as you did locally, unless here is not the read-only variable which was turning it off locally. So Fastlane Match on a build machine is running only in a read-only mode. It's not going to modify anything in the repository. It will just download the certificates and provisioning profiles, make sure that all of them are installed on the machine so that the Fastlane deployed, which is the next step, is able to pick them up and properly sign the app. But before I will get into the actual deploy, let's process versioning. And I already mentioned a little bit about that when I was covering the override variables above. This process will actually use beplus CLI, mobile get version and mobile get build number. Take a look here in case you want to know more. And it will try to get the highest semantic version and the highest build number available that you can use in order to deploy your app to both Apple App Store and Google Play. Actually, there's also a sync functionality here. So in case you will, for any reason, let's say your Android build over time will be at some point failing, or you will send more builds and your build numbers will get out of sync. One of the build numbers will be, 88 and the other one will be 92. And you want to get those builds in sync. By default, the beplus mobile get build number, this one actually, the beplus mobile get build number will make sure that the build numbers will be synchronized. Here is just the output to make sure that you will be able to see the value that was auto-detected in the log output. And that's it. Yeah, these two lines are making sure that the app version and build number will be available in the next step, which is Fastlane deploy. By default, the variable you will export here is not available in the next step, and this is the way how you can achieve it. The last step, Fastlane deploy, actually just again shows whether the app version and app build number was properly propagated from the previous step. It will enter the proper directory and it will run the Fastlane deploy for the particular environment. There's one thing I would like to mention here, and you can see that the further I go down the path of the steps required to define my workflow, there is more and more configuration. So I have a lot of configuration variables here. I have a lot of configuration variables here. Before I will actually construct my workflow from the snippets, which is the only thing you have to do, just copy snippet by snippet and paste it into your file you have created within your repo. I want to mention that it's not necessary to have the configuration in here. Like, imagine that you will add, for example, a Google Map integration into your app. Now you will go to GitHub, you will add the map key for both iOS and Android into your environment variables. Then you will go to the workflow, you will make sure that the environment variable is available for the build process, and then you are going to develop locally, yet you don't have the value available there. All of these problems is something that beplus Bootstrap Mobile All Access solves, and it can be solved with the beplus CLI. You already have a beplus CLI installed within this workflow, which was here in the install beplus CLI step. And the next step, prepare configuration F, and the exact line that is commented here is the line that can make the configuration automatically available for you. Also, beplus CLI comes with a way how to call Fastlane and synchronizing the certificates and provisioning profiles, as well as Fastlane deploy and deploying the actual app and providing the underlying environment automatically for you, whether you are running locally or you're running in the cloud. So you can actually, instead of adding all of the environment variables to GitHub, you can add them to AWS account with a beplus CLI and then have them available regardless whether you will be building with GitHub Actions, with Bitrise, with CodeMagic, developing locally. All of it will be available out of the box for you. That's the simplification of the process if you would like to, and the real value that's in the beplus Bootstrap Mobile All Access. But let's get back to the workflow. I will actually go step by step and make each of these snippets available in my workflow file. Now I have my workflow done, so you can see that all of the steps that are part of the speedrun are also part of my workflow file. Just make sure that you have the right spacing within the JML, otherwise it won't work. And I know that it will be much easier for you in case I will provide the whole workflow file as a part of the code base. But that's not actually what I want to do, because then you will just blindly use it without even understanding like what's in there. So this is a part of the learning process. And with beplus Bootstrap Mobile All Access, you will get much more than this minimal workflow. I also separated this workflow into reusable steps, but before I will get into it, let's actually finish the workflow and run it so you can see the result. The last step I want to do is to configure a trigger. You can learn more about how to set up events that trigger workflows in the GitHub documentation. Actually, here is the link. But right now, I want to use a workflow dispatch event that will allow me to kick off a build from GitHub Actions manually while providing some variables to it. So let's copy the last snippet to my workflow file here. And now I have my workflow ready. If you have pushed the workflow to the repo, go to GitHub, switch to the Actions tab, and you will see a minimal workflow in the left menu. In case you will click on the workflow, you can see this workflow has a workflow dispatch event trigger. Right now, I can trigger the event, let's say with the REST API or GitHub CLI, or I can even do it here with the Run Workflow button from the UI of GitHub, where I can specify for which environment am I building, let's say dev, which platform I'm building, Android or iOS, and I can provide app version and app build number override in case I would like to. So I'm going to kick off a build for both platforms. The issue with this setup, as you can see right now, is that I have builds running for iOS and Android, not knowing like which of them is which. With the beplus Bootstrap Mobile All Access, I offer a much more reusable way of combining the workflows by using different workflows or composite actions that are part of the repo automatically. But you are already familiar with the syntax, you know what steps needs to be run for each platform, so you can, for example, even easily copy this minimal JML file and make it like an iOS and Android, have a proper name, and then you will see a distinction in the GitHub interface. When you will open the build details, you can see all of the steps you've added into the workflow. So right now, GitHub Actions set up the job, it checked out the code, switch node to version 20, set Python to the appropriate version. You can see that here is the actual step of switching Java to version 17, which means this is an Android build. The install of CocoaPod dependencies were skipped, Fastlane match was skipped as well, and the app is actually being deployed. When I take a look at the iOS build, I can see that my build failed. There's a problem with the Fastlane match, which actually error cloning certificates repo. Please make sure you have read access to the repository you want to use. And I probably know what I have missed. In the configuration sections for secret for iOS, there is a BE Fastlane match storage git SSH key private content. This SSH key actually serves the purpose of giving access to the match repo, and I forgot to put it into my GitHub Actions configuration. This is actually a value that can be reused among different projects, so I went to GitHub settings, secrets and variables for actions. I'm going to configure it as a secret on the organization level. So let's click Manage Organization Secrets and add a new organization secret. So my secret was added, BE Fastlane match storage git SSH key private content on the organization level. So in case I will go back to the repository, I can see that it's available. So let's go back to the actions. I can see that the Android build in the meantime was successful. So let's kick off the iOS build again. When I will go to the build now, I can see clearly based on the steps that are being skipped that this is an iOS build. So let's wait whether the Fastlane match step will right now will actually complete successfully. So yeah, I was right, that was it. My Fastlane match right now completed successfully, so the only thing I forgot is to add the SSH key to the GitHub Actions configuration so that the runner will have access to my repo. Right now, the only thing I have to do is to wait for the iOS build to finish. So as you can see, both iOS and Android builds were successful. So what do you think? Was it fun? I would say most of it. Like, you cannot avoid creating the apps with App Store and Google Play. You cannot avoid generating or synchronizing code signing assets, certificates, provisioning profiles, creating a Google Play upload key. But what you can avoid is that with beplus Bootstrap Mobile All Access, you will get not only this minimal workflow, but a much more reusable workflow in order to compose your own. You will also get a way how to set up the configuration in a different way. Like, I think that the most problematic part of this setup is actually putting the configuration variables on GitHub. And even though GitHub allows you to reuse some of them on the organizational level, there are environments, like the whole setup is really nice. But it doesn't help me in any way when I am developing the app locally or when I want to run the build and deploy it from my local machine, which might happen at some point, especially with the dev and stage environments, right? So with beplus Bootstrap Mobile All Access, you will get a full access to the beplus CLI, which can serve as a single place which will save your configuration in your AWS account. And don't worry about AWS. It's completely transparent on one end and fully customizable on the other. But it will force you to use the best practice of storing your configuration on a single place. You can easily, from then on, migrate between GitHub Actions, Bitrise, CodeMagic at any point just by changing the configuration. You will have your configuration automatically available on your local machine for development. So back with the example of adding a Google Maps API key, for example, you will just add it once, you will develop locally, and then you will just run the build and the configuration is automatically going to be available on the build machine. So there is a much smaller probability of making a mistake of adding some kind of configuration locally and forgetting to set it up on a build when you are releasing the feature a week later, right? But there is much more to it. So I hope that you got the value from this tutorial. Please let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. And check out beplus Bootstrap Mobile, because it can really revolutionize the way how you develop, build and deploy your React Native mobile apps. Thanks for watching.